Welcome to the Action for Happiness Carpool podcast. We had such a fun time in the car with John Kabat-Zinn, we decided to run it back with the world's happiest man and accompany Matthieu Ricard from his hotel to the airport. I'm your host Guy, and along with Anne and the new member William, who introduced themselves at the start of the podcast. Matthieu gave up his scientific career to become a monk and moved to the Himalayas, where he resides to this day. He translated for the Dalai Lama for over a decade and has written many best-selling books on the subject of happiness and altruism.
I remember, you initially when you opened and you said, if happiness is the goal of all goals, surely that deserves some investigation.
And knowing that in taking that breath, I'm pulling myself into the present moment.
It's wonderful that the breath is a way to lead you there, but in fact, in truth, you don't even need the breath. You just need to connect with this awareness. Experiencing that's the most primary fact that you can ever have.
The closest to truth we can ever be, right? Just that there is
that's the
consciousness
deepest aspect of what you can be when you look within your experience and within your mind. Mm-hmm. You come to this pure awareness.
And I remember someone...
I didn't know what to do. Then this double rainbow came. I probably said, oh, then I got up and left.
His talk on happiness is one of the most viewed TED Talks, and he's one of the most influential figures in mindfulness and meditation today. Action for Happiness is a movement of people committed to building a happier and more caring society. Visit the website for more details and hit subscribe to get updates on the latest podcasts and videos.
We've tried this before with John Kabat-Zinn 2 months ago.
Okay, wow. Here's the... Anyway, we're in a very fancy car that kind of like you would like to have in Tibet instead of those old jeeps. And
so let me introduce you first.
Oh, yes, because I have no idea.
Yes.
You looks very nice person, but what?
But we're not really very nice, so
no,
don't be
I'll
fooled.
find out by in 1 hour and 25 minutes.
So this is one of my best friends for so many years.
Hello.
So he's my regular co-host on the Action for Happiness podcast.
Also, that's Action for Happiness podcast.
You're within Action for Happiness podcast.
Yeah, so I got it. Now I like Action for Happiness, so there's no problem.
Well, we like you very much too, so you give your introduction.
I actually found out about Action for Happiness through your TED Talk. So it was...
Which was done
TED
much
Talk.
before Action for Happiness
No,
existed.
that one. And then there was a link. So I searched your name on Google, and then you did a talk at Action for Happiness.
Oh, yes, okay.
And that's how we got involved with Action for Happiness. I thought, what a great organisation, what a great idea. So...
Nice.
And we've been volunteering with them.
Okay, so it's taken really. I remember when Richard Lyad first presented the idea to his Holiness, asking if he wanted to be some kind of spiritual patron, and he said yes, and it was just like an idea. That was, I think, at Zurich, the conference on is altruism compatible with modern economic systems?
Yeah.
That was, I don't know, 2000 and something. And that gave us the book called Caring Economics, I think so. So, yes, so that went a long way since then. It's wonderful. I think there are so many people who are inspired by this movement.
Yeah, well, Anne's also a maths teacher at a college here in London. And so not only, Anne introduced me to mindfulness many, many years ago, and he applies it in his classrooms with his students.
Yes. Oh, great. And then
there's Will.
And then there's Will. So we met through Cornwall.
Yeah, so hello. So in university, I started to engage with mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
I went on to my master's and explored it further. And how does mindfulness impact authenticity?
Authenticity.
Yep. I was looking for how do you enable optimal performance?
Coherence.
I'm sorry?
Or coherence, yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So then afterwards had moved into coaching and positive psychology, and had met up with Gui Hung here just a few years back, but had been more involved in the project just a couple of weeks now.
So he's a newbie to the group.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
So then what? Mindfulness driving to the airport, not
So yeah,
not getting too nervous. I'm going to miss the plane. What to do?
exactly.
What time is your flight?
Oh, it's plenty of time. That's why I'm
good,
very
good.
much smiling. So,
Chilled.
And William actually studied in Madison, you know, out of
Oh.
with Dr. Ritchie.
oh, you did?
Yeah, I attended the community there, learning about the practice. And,
You mean the Tergar community or the
Yeah.
Healthy Mind community?
Tergar.
Wonderful.
And then the
Yeah.
temple there as well.
Yeah, I was there in what was it? November, I think.
Wow.
Good.
Yeah, amazing place.
Yeah, it's amazing because this Center for Healthy Minds, I think that's the first time in the world that you have, I don't know, 200 or so researchers, I don't know the exact number, which are not like, you know, fringe researcher, mainstream researcher, serious researcher, coached by someone who is one of the most rigorous and, you know, nice scientists around. But at the same time, who have a personal, half of them at least have a personal practice, mostly in Buddhism through Tergar, but or maybe other ones. So that gives a unique flavor to that whole place, you know. And of course, I'm sure detractors might say, oh, then they will, that sort of their spiritual or Buddhist leaning will influence their research, but that's stupid. Because you see, suppose you were a fan of sports, and you will study the effect of sport on health, and say, oh no, you can't study that because you are biased because you like sports.
Yeah.
Or you will want to know what's happened in the chess player's mind, and you really love chess, and say, no, you are not qualified as a scientist because you have a prejudice. So that's ridiculous. I mean, then you would need to research and study only thing that you just can't care anything about, which will be highly boring.
Yeah.
So I think the main criteria is your research rigorous or not? Or do you have a hidden agenda? And even for Buddhist monks who participate in this research, like me as a guinea pig and collaborator, I really don't have an agenda. Of course, I'm happy when the result of the research do show that yes, the mind training makes a difference. Not so much that I need to be convinced, because I can see that in my innermost being, but because I think to know that would be a good contribution to society, to bring in education in every workplace and so forth. But it's not because Buddhism is right. Once I remember I told think about the research to a friend in Tibet, who's very sort of strong Buddhist, and he went, this is right. So of course, this is a bit. Anyway, even you rejoice to that extent, in no way they should influence the direction of your research, the way you, in the way you sort of present and interpret the result. So science is about a rigorous approach of reality investigation. So that's, I think, one of the great, quality of all the researchers with whom I collaborated for the last 20 years, especially within the Mind and Life Institute, is that absolute requirement for scientific rigor, and also for the scientific, so the rigorous authenticity from the part of the practitioner, not to make it up and whatever.
Yeah.
So when they do verbal reports or something. So that's so it's a wrong way of criticizing that. Say, oh, those people are Buddhists, therefore they are biased in their research. I mean, you are much more likely to be biased by financial interest if you, I don't know, do research in the pharmaceutical world or something. So I think that's why I'm so, feel very close to those scientists, because I saw over the years how rigorous they are. And then when something doesn't work, I mean, they say, they even publish paper, well, we try something with meditators for that particular aspect. Nothing happens special. They are not different from other people in these particular skills. So it happens also as, why should meditation bring you skills on each and everything in life? Yes.
Yeah. You said that, what stuck out to me is that Buddhism is a systematic approach to training the mind, and so that really kind of stood out to me.
Much deeper than that. Buddhism is about ways to identify the cause of suffering and remove the cause of suffering. So who could be against that? No, it's not of saying that the universe has been created in this way and that way. We don't care. Anyway, we are here. So, but causes of suffering, what are they? Can they be remedied? Can we go a little bit more deeper than just superficial cause of suffering. You know, when the Buddha taught about the cause of suffering, we didn't need the Buddha to tell us that a headache or a toothache or losing someone who dies is a cause of suffering. Let's say, okay, we know that. Why would you become such a great teacher to tell us that? But the Buddha, importance of his teaching on suffering, he's told us about cause of suffering that we somehow believe are cause of happiness. You know, if we think that power, fame, wealth, endless succession of pleasant experiences, all kinds of things that we pursue will bring happiness, and usually that makes us turn our back to happiness. So that's what the Buddha wanted to teach, and even deeper, that the final ultimate cause of suffering is ignorance, is distortion of reality. So for that we needed the Buddha, just not to tell us that, you know, having a car crash is a cause of suffering.
But so when I hear the word systematic approach of training the mind, I think of mindfulness, and for me that the mindfulness, once I learned, really was a step-by-step almost, as far as the way that I felt I was learning more and experiencing what it was like to be in the present moment.
So yes, of course, mindfulness is a key element in Buddhist practice. It's one indispensable tool. It's not the ultimate goal. Like there are so many tools on the way, and each of them is precious, each of them is indispensable, but you know, none of these tools constitute the only part, and the most essential part. The most essential part is about recognizing the cause of suffering, wisdom, and the means to get rid of it, and mindfulness is one of the powerful means. Now, of course, in the modern context, mindfulness became better known than anything else, especially in the secular aspect. There's practically only that. And if you look at the history of you know, the extraordinary spreading of mindfulness throughout the world, it's like kind of amazing. I mean, 2 years ago, Time magazine did a cover, the mindful revolution, and this is again and again, and this is amazing, and that's really due to this you know, groundbreaking vision of John Kabat-Zinn. But if you remember the way it started, you know, he was a researcher and also he's a doctor. So he realized there was so much suffering in the medical world, both from the patients and also the caregivers, that led to, you could, besides the physical pain, there was a huge component of stress or mental unease. And so 35 years ago, I don't know exactly 35 years, it was, you know, meditation was not the kind of thing, especially in the US, that you say, okay, let's bring that to a hospital and to school. You would look and say, hey, what are you doing here? It's not the place. But if you say mindfulness-based stress reduction, then people will say, oh, that looks interesting. So it was a very wise way of approaching. And then there is this whole course, of course, that lasts usually a number of weeks, like 8 weeks, which through the course is not just only being mindful in the present moment, it's also bringing, you know, physical posture, it brings the pro-social behavior of opening to each other in the group, kindness and so forth. So the course as such definitely incorporate all these other aspects. But then, you know, if you just do, say, a few days, 2-3 days of initiation or introduction to mindfulness, and you do that in a corporate world where you might think, oh, that might be a good way to make people work more hours without being too burnt out and deliver more, and somehow they're happy even though they were about to burn out because of the outer conditions at work. So that, of course, will be a completely wrong motivation to squeeze more out of people, and in the end they will break all the more, because you can't keep on squeezing people to the last drop. So even though from what I've seen, by occasionally you know, visiting some of those places and doing short meditations, it doesn't seem that people are taking it that direction. They more use it to improve to actually diminish their own sort of stress and be more serene in what they do, and to improve their judgment, having bigger perspective, and to improve the quality of human relationship. So that's good. But still, you could imagine that this be instrumentalized, just for sort of cold efficiency.
Yeah.
So, in no means is to either launch another movement. If I'm 72 years old, the last thing I want to do is that, and the best thing I want to do is disappear in my hermitage. But since I have been involved in places which typically might lead to those distortions, like teaching meditation in the morning, as John did on 1 year at the World Economic Forum, for instance. For 2 consecutive years I did that every morning, and then this year I just come from there. I was asked actually to participate in 2 workshops on the mystery of the mind, with philosopher of the mind and psychologist and neuroscientist, and beginning with a 20 minutes introduction to meditation. So in those contexts, I felt it was like something essential as a lifeguard or measure to, right from the start, speak of caring mindfulness. Not that if you practice mindfulness properly through the MBSR program, you will not naturally grow loving kindness and compassion, but in this much more, sometimes shorter version, a little bit skinnier version of it, and who knows who are the people who will use it, because there's so much literature available now.
So I wanted to go back to what you said at the start. We think achievement, we think money, we think that those definitions of happiness and success, pleasure. And working in education, I find, when I ask young people, what are your goals? What do you want to do when you finish this course and go on to university, and what's your ultimate aim? And very often, it is money. That's a very usual response. And I suppose at that age, words like altruism and compassion, it's not something that's common language. I'm sure at home, their parents will say, they're very caring to their brothers and sisters, and their friends will say the same thing. But when I talk about what's your ambition, it's very often, I want to make as much money as possible. It seems like the competition, when the media shows that the ideal life is a successful movie star or rock star or sports, idolizing these figures, it's very hard to draw their attention to other things. And that's why I think a schools program, Guy and I, we had talks the other day with our college about starting mindfulness in schools program at my college, and we talk on top of just the practical aspects of applying it to exam success or reducing stress and anxiety, to bring in the heartfulness, the compassion element. I think that's very important. That's the message of Action for Happiness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of to build a better society.
What suggestions would you give? Because there are motivations for success and for money. There's probably really good rooted, motivations for that. But how do you align it properly so that they go about it in a way that's, compassionate?
Yes, so you see, yes, it's common. In the US, another thing that is very common among teenagers, I want to be famous. And then you ask them how. You say, any way, no matter, it doesn't matter. So that's, famous, money. A little bit later, they probably also think in terms of power when they are like in their 20s. And then, some of them think also this of endless repetition of pleasant experiences. That's why they go to nightclub till 5 in the morning and stuff like that, I guess. But in the end, everyone collapses, but anyway, never mind. So yes, so it's sort of, especially in teenagers, this is an age of curiosity, exploration, and also opportunity. And the teenage period is now a little bit longer than it used to be in the past. And there was precisely a panel recently that was coming forum on the teenager's brain. And it seemed that period has extended now from, say, almost 10 from 10 years old to almost past 20 in a way. So where there's a period of both vulnerability, potential, so great opportunities for also values, role models, finding a sense of direction and inspiration in life, but also for taking risks, experimenting wild things. And so because the kind of areas of the brain that are more moderating and regulating those impulses are not there yet fully in place. There's a big rearrangement of the brain at puberty. So now it's very hard to head-on convince them of something else. And often, sometimes it takes quite some time to realize, when they are the 40s, the famous crisis of the 40s, when my life has been meaningless. And I met someone who said, when I was 20, I wanted to make $1 million. Now I made 5, and I wasted 20 years of my life. So then you start re-questioning your life and saying, where are my priorities, blah, blah, blah. Of course, somehow you spend 20 years experimenting in that. So you may say, well, that's how the life works. But you may also say, well, maybe there are more optimal way to proceed and sort of to exert your discernment earlier on, because it's not that we want, the most stupid idea would be to deprive yourself of what is really good in life. Okay, that would be absurd. The real question is, what is actually will bring you some deep fulfillment?
Yeah.
Nobody contests that. Why should we prevent people from walking toward happiness and well-being and fulfillment and sense of accomplishment? But if you're misled by your own sort of distortion, and you turn your back to happiness and run to other causes of suffering, then of course it's not a question of this is bad what you do, but simply you are contradicting your aspiration by your actions. I mean your deeper aspirations. So now the thing with money and looking, the way you look and power, is people say, okay, let's secure that, and then the human qualities like love, friendship, flourishing. Once I have money, I will take care of that myself. Basically, these are sort of outer conditions that I really want to be the best, and then I'll relax and spend time with friends and all that. So this is embodied in a wonderful sort of survey or questionnaire that was given to people in the United States. They asked him, who do you admire more? And then they gave the name of a famous actor, Hollywood actor, and the Dalai Lama, and I forgot who that actor was. And then everybody said, I admire more the Dalai Lama. Now if you have a choice, and he was also very rich and so forth, who would you want to be if you can choose? And then 90% said, I want to be that actor. The idea was that, well, the Dalai Lama is wonderful, but he's not very rich, and the situation is not very good. He has no much freedom to move everywhere. So let's secure the outer aspect, be beautiful, rich, famous, and then I will take care myself of becoming a good person at the Dalai Lama. But this is, this is an illusion, because if you spend 20 years becoming like this actor, by pushing your way, elbowing your way, by kicking out competitors and showing off very artificial value all the time from morning till evening, and then your mind will somehow be sort of damaged by that, and then you will not derive happiness, and then there's no way you on top of that could have the human quality of the Dalai Lama. So I think one of the best way because there's no point arguing with these teenagers anyway. They hate to be bullied into doing something else. But some of them might be swayed by, because now some people do trust science and things like that. There are many studies. If you look at Tim Kasser's study, for example, The High Price of Materialism, there's a book that came out of his study. For 20 years, he studied people, inclination to consumerism and materialism, what we call extrinsic values, wealth, your house, the beauty, whether your companion is beautiful or not, whether you say you wearing flashy clothes, whether you have the latest model of the sport car, whatever. So all those extrinsic values. And then intrinsic values, how you feel now. You're sitting there and you feel happy when you look within, or you feel a bit sad and oppressed and not quite, lost. And then how is the quality of your relation with your real friends? Do you know how to really enjoy some quality time, and all these kind of values. Now you take 10,000 people, and what Tim Kasser and his and I think this his mentor, I forgot his first name, but it's something Ryan did. They questioned people on many things, and they classified them. They took 25% more materialistically oriented and consumerism oriented, and then the 25% less consumeristic and more valuing more this intrinsic value. And then they saw what are the other, what can you say about those people? They found out that the highly materialistic people basically were not so happy. They were pursuing hedonic happiness, that is the renewing of pleasurable experience, but not eudaimonic happiness, which is deep sense of flourishing, of accomplishment, of well-being, but as a way of being, not just as sensations and so forth. So, but even those who were pursuing hedonic happiness, they were somehow failing to achieve that. Then they had a lot of social contact, but less real friends. They can rely upon, they can ask advice, they can confide in, just for solace when they are in difficulty. They were less concerned about global issues, poverty, environment. They didn't care much. Me first. They were more obsessed with debt, interestingly. So basically, this researcher said, okay, we are not giving moral advice, but if you want to be happy, oh yes, they were less healthy because they were more inclined to drink, to smoke, to whatever, take up substances and things like that, and to live an unhealthy life. So they say, well, what do you want? To be happy, healthy, have good friends, enjoy life? Then you should know that this is a fact that has been studied over a large population. There's nothing to do with religion, with Buddhism, with spirituality. This is a fact of life. So maybe, you could present that in education as a simple way, not as a must-do or normative way, but just as a part of the knowledge, which is not often taught.
Exactly. That's what exactly I was going to say. It's not often taught. It's something hugely neglected. When I look back at my own education, and we were all at school, was there any emphasis on words like compassion, altruism at school? And
so people have been doing it. I think Richard Layard tried to bring better way of education. People like Rishi Davidson, they're doing that in many schools in Madison now, bringing the kindness curriculum, which is a 10 weeks curriculum. There are quite a few initiatives, but it's very encouraging because it's picking up. In Holland there's a big movement, in France there's getting there. So it's happening, but as any cultural evolution change, it takes more time than just deciding, okay, from tomorrow I'm going to do physical exercise. Because now physical exercise is in the culture, it's not just few individuals deciding. So this takes, 5-10 years, whatever. So the quicker the better, but it's never instantaneous.
You're listening to the Action for Happiness Carpool podcast. This episode we speak with Matthieu Ricard. His contribution to science, especially in how the brain reacts and changes through meditation, has been incredible and is changing lives all around the world.
And a lot of the people that I work with as well, it's they've come there out of pain, out of necessity to create a change and evolve, or they're growing stagnant and they want more fulfillment, more of those qualities that you alluded to true happiness. How do you help people to really optimize that process so that way they can integrate it into their lifestyle? A lot of people might have good intentions initially but not really commit to the practices. You said there's lots of familiarity that's required. It's a true lifestyle. How do you
So there are many ways. Education, of course, is the most is by far the best way to proceed, because everyone goes to education. So if it becomes part of the education system in a meaningful way, that will be by far the best. Then along with that, of course, part of education is parenting, role models and so forth, mentoring. That's part. Now, besides that, then you come to policy making. Policy being favorable to this kind of approach and not sort of blocking them, especially in education. Oh no, this is not something that we should do in education, blah blah, etc. Then there is a cultural change. What is the, what seems to be the most appealing thing in society to do? Now people like to do physical exercise. They like to go to natural places because they have been deprived of contact with nature and so forth. So not everyone can afford it, etc., etc. But it's cultural change. And then there are what we could call sort of ideas, the power of ideas. So people like me, the question you asked is exactly the question I was asked. I remember some years ago, I was in Hong Kong, and people were asking exactly the same question, sometimes even in a more dramatic way. Would you give me a reason why I should remain alive, for instance? I heard that from 20 years old. So then, in the world of ID, that what sort of inspired me or decided me to try with my modest capacity to gather information, knowledge, and put it together and write books like, the happiness and altruism and the art of meditation and all those books. Not just to, try to become a writer or a successful author or make a living out of it, but simply because what can I do to answer those questions? And, and just not while driving with friends in a car, which is always nice, but, reaching a slightly greater number of people. And it might have reached few people. Again, yesterday, once or twice, someone, I'm not known here much in England, but came to me and said, the happiness book made a big difference in my life. So you feel a little bit, why, how? Someone you don't know and suddenly tells you have been important in his life. That seems a bit strange at first sight, but well, that's the power of ideas. And not that I didn't invent anything at all. I just gathered all this wisdom and knowledge and put it together in a way that could be understood. So all those ways together, chiefly education, and then societal change through evolution of culture, and then contribution of ideas to create those tipping points to a culture that is not so much materialistic and so forth. So there are many ways, and that's how slowly culture change.
And we need more videos like yours on your TED Talk on YouTube, because that was one way that touched me. I remember, you initially when you opened and you said, if happiness is the goal of all goals, surely that deserves some investigation. If what we do, and we've Guy and I, we've been friends.
No, typically when people say I want to be rich, because they mean that will make me happy.
Yes.
So that's what they mean. That they don't want to have money, because they say, that's the best way to find happiness. But they don't. Nobody thinks it's just for the sake of money. So some people say, well, there are many things that are more important than money, but you need money to get them. So that's sort of their reasoning. Okay, I will be happy if I go every summer to the Bahamas. I'll be happy if I have a very nice car and beautiful house, and etc., etc. So that I need money, and this gives me some sense of confidence, of less vulnerability. I can achieve what I want because money can buy me my way in many ways. So all that is to sort of be happy. So if you can show that there's nothing wrong with money, it's an instrument that can be used for good or for bad, for building or for destroying, but money itself and even the power that money gives is absolutely no guarantee of happiness. It doesn't lie there. You can be the happy poor or the depressed rich. So there's no. It's obvious. So it's just to help people reassess, okay, yes, we want to be happy. Of course, we don't want to suffer. So now, sit down. What is the best way to achieve that? Nothing wrong with money, nothing wrong with this, nothing wrong with that, but in itself, is it going to bring happiness? No. So now, does in itself inner freedom, compassion, resilience, inner peace, will that bring happiness? Well, the answer is yes, they will contribute big way to happiness. So you just have to, be sensible, and that's why you can explain that in books, as I try to do, and others have done it better than me. So I think this is something so indispensable, for a 20 years old or whatever, to sense a sense of direction, what really matters in life. Of course, they know what they don't want life to be like, boring and meaningless and sort of shrunk and fragmented, but they also sometimes don't want what they want the life to be. And that's where they start, fantasizing about things that we know and no guarantee for happiness, even though there's nothing wrong with being rich, powerful and all that, because we can use it for a good purpose. But that's not in itself a guarantee for happiness. I mean, Richard Layard in his book, the New Science of Happiness, he clearly says that you can't expect, for example, GDP to be the direct cause of happiness, because to be a byproduct of GDP. The happiness has its own criteria for success that need to be pursued by themselves, not as byproducts. So similarly in life, you can't expect that happiness will be a byproduct of money, will be a byproduct of power, will be a byproduct of endless pursuit of pleasant sensations. No, happiness has different characteristics that could be cultivated as skills in and of themselves. More inner freedom, not to be the slave of your thoughts. More benevolence, not to be deadly selfish from morning to evening. More inner peace, that you are not destabilized by anything, by like a smallest thing, like smallest criticism will make you upset or angry or depressed, that the smallest sort of praise will make you puffed up with arrogance. So you become so vulnerable. So inner freedom and inner peace is not to be vulnerable to that. So all that can be cultivated. Those are skills. Neuroscientists will confirm that. So just looking for happiness in the right place where it is, and then pursue the means to achieve it.
And we've been having hour-long conversations since we were in our late teens. Because a lot of questions we didn't know the answers to, but we were keen on talking about them and just exploring them. And Anne introduced me back then to Descartes.
Yes, I'm not sure.
And so when you guys
source for happiness.
When you guys were talking about him the other night, we were just kind of tapping each other on the leg, just thinking, wow, something that for the past 20-something years we've been talking about.
My father wrote a book, which I didn't read, by the way, called Descartes, Useless and Uncertain. Well, I don't know, but I'm not so... I mean, I prefer much more the Greek philosopher, like the Epictetus and Seneca.
But what if we...
No, I just read a sentence because I have a friend who is a Swiss handicap philosopher, and he did a book called 3 Friends in Quest of Wisdom. That's going to be in English soon. That was in 2016. All year long, it was #1 bestseller in non-fiction. So he often quotes like Epictetus, and we met recently again a few days ago about the fact that when we are upset because someone treats us badly or said something terrible, in fact, even those philosopher of the classical Greek and Roman philosopher, they really see that it is purely the way you translate it into misery. That in fact, that's up to you. If someone insults you, well, the insult itself cannot harm you. It's the way you interpret it, and that you don't have a choice not to be insulted. You don't have a choice when you have bullies like some of those politicians or people. But you certainly, so that's out of your control. So I just read this book that came out a few years ago called Assholes.
Yeah. Well, so
About people who, you can't change those guys.
Yeah.
But you can certainly be more or less affected. Not in the way that you submissive and resignation, but simply free.
Yeah, your interpretation of those words. If your example about the boat, and when you wake it up and you realize the boat's empty.
Yeah, and also, yes, of course. Then why should you be upset? That shows how important is when your ego is targeted. But
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about people being not nice to you.
Yeah.
The Buddha once was insulted by someone,
Mm-hmm.
and he said to the guy, when you are being given something, someone gives you, and you don't take it, to whom that thing belongs?
Yeah.
Well, the guy said, well, to the person who is trying to give it.
Yeah.
He said, well, if I don't take your insults, they
Yeah.
stay with you.
nice.
Yeah.
And so like that.
But the Descartes. Sorry, Anne, I really wanted to finish this point.
Yes.
So you said the useless, but what it did.
No, I don't know why he said that. But
Well, it allowed us to have that thought experiment from a young age. Well, what if this was all an illusion? What if there was an evil demon tricking us to think that this whole experience was real? So, I mean, that sounds absurd to a lot of people. Yeah? Of course, this is real. I can touch my arm and I can feel my body. This is reality. There is nothing else but this.
yes.
But we were able to explore. What if, we were to wake up tomorrow and be a brain in a jar somewhere?
Yes, well, you would not see anything.
Yeah, or not see anything, but because we had these conversations and we talked about it, when we got into mindfulness and reading Eckhart Tolle and reading John Kabat-Zinn and where is this space when we're in the present moment, when we're not
Yes.
thinking about the past and we're not thinking in the future, and doing this mindfulness practice over the 5 years, you start to taste just this present moment. And I guess the idea that you're the book we call Beyond the Self, right?
Yes.
You guys touched upon it, how, and another subject we talk about is the self being an illusion,
Convenient illusion, yes.
a convenient illusion. We just wanted you to I guess speak on that a bit, because the idea of the self being illusion again is a very weird and wild
Well,
concept.
No,
But
it's not weird. I mean, this.
when I try and describe it, at least to my friends, it's like what are you smoking?
Because there's a self. Who said there's no self?
But as the ego.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But how does it exist? Is it as Descartes says, an autonomous, permanent, unitary entity? We don't think that unless we have a split personality and multiple personality disorder, we don't have 16 selves. We have
Yeah.
one. We think this me, and that me is unhappy or happy or crossed or joyful or upset or whatever. But we think it as one, yes, basically. And that's convenient because we could not work with 16 different personalities, even though we change more than 16 ways in a day in terms of our mood and emotions. So it's just simply a unifying concept that we attach to the stream of our experience, and that's fine. You can distinguish three things. The I. Okay, I exist, I wake up, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm whatever. They're good. There's nothing wrong with that. I am alive. Then there is the person. Person is the history of your stream of consciousness. Of course, this is not the same as yours, and there's no content that this is some form of existence as a dynamic stream of experience with a continuity.
Yes.
It's not interrupted. It's not the same as yours. Okay, that's fine. Now, the self or the ego is adding something to that, either through intuition or to a philosophical stance, like Descartes, or to intuition that I have the same that this little boy that I was, and my mother showed me the photo. So, that, okay, I label that Matthieu, and this, why not? Can give a name to something, just as you give a name to a house doesn't make the house become what the name is. If you say your house little paradise, well, that's still whatever house it is. It doesn't become a paradise for that, but that's the way when the postman comes, he delivers the letter to little paradise, and everyone understands where is little paradise. So that's okay. But now if you start to think that it has to be treated like a paradise, or that self that is separate, autonomous, it becomes so important because it would exist as a separate entity, then there's quite a difference, because you will relate to that in a very polarized way, try to please it or to protect it, and then a lot of chain reaction will come out of that: attraction, repulsion, anger, hatred, desire, pride, jealousy. All that revolves around this idea. So now if it was there, then why not protecting it and pleasing it? But what the Buddhist analytical approach contends is that if you try to find it, you don't find such unitary, autonomous entity. You don't find it, neither in the body nor in the consciousness. It's a concept which is fine. It's a label attached to that stream. There's no problem with that. It's only a problem when you start to reify it and then overreact according to that reification. So then it becomes a cause of suffering. And only because of that, it's useful to deconstruct it. It's not by just philosophical curiosity. If it had no consequence in terms of suffering, then who cares if you believe that you have this little diamond in the middle of your heart, that's me. Okay, so that's the only reason. And then, if you follow that analysis, it's clear that you cannot find such entity.
Yeah.
So that's all.
So by freeing up from that identity, it's the analysis that actually creates that letting go of that attachment.
Yeah. So people think you become like a vegetable. You have you are nobody. But actually, the real consequences of that is freedom, not being nobody and a kind of sort of empty ghost. Sort of you become like a ghost town. So actually it's complete freedom, because you are not entangled in this wrong belief. No, you have been living with this imposture, like someone who has been impersonifying you and using your credit card for 10 years, and suddenly you found out it was an imposture. So that's why if it's an imposture, you need to unmask it. If it's not, then fine. If it's your credit card, please use it. So that's the only reason why this investigation has value, is because it decreases the cause of suffering.
And the I think, therefore I am, which stood true for us for so many years. And then, when we realize through mindfulness, it's like, even when you're not thinking, you am more than, in fact, you ever
yes.
are, right?
First of all, yes, there's this very deep experiential sort of acknowledgement that there's basic experience. You can call it I am, or maybe if it's not the I, actually, sheer experience.
The am, the am.
The am, yes. Sheer experience. There's pure awareness. Yes, I am experiencing. That's the most primary fact that you can ever have.
The closest to truth we can ever be, right? Just that there is
that's the
consciousness,
deepest aspect of what you can be when you look within your experience and within your mind. You come to this pure awareness, unconditioned, not filled with mental construct, not sort of dualistic subject-object. Doesn't think I am. It just thinks, okay, this is pure, direct experience. Now from there, start making mental construct, self and others, and I and the rest of the world, and then emotion, thought, etc. But these all secondary sort of developments or construct out of this pure awareness. Pure awareness is, there's no such thing as discursive reasoning, I think, like therefore I am. It's just pure being, but not being as an entity.
Right.
Pure experience.
Yes.
And pure awareness. So that's not something. That's a pure experience.
Yeah.
So that's the Buddhist approach, at least.
How do you engage in that? How do you get to that experience?
Well, that's you need familiarization, because if you ask someone what's the nature of your mind, then they'll say, what are you talking about? So you need to look.
But isn't it that moment when you're taking in a breath and you're trying to feel the sensation that you are being present.
There's something of that is there. It's always there, by the way, but you don't.
Right.
So you might have glimpse and insight, but a little bit like the sky you see through the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
It's still small, it's narrow, it's not very deep.
But for many people, that initial seeing the light for the first time could be
the freshness of the present moment.
Yeah.
Is actually connecting with something, and then try to recognize it beneath the whirlpool of thoughts.
Yeah.
So it depends, how clear, vivid, obvious, lasting that recognition is. Will it last even though you are driving the car in a traffic jam? You still see the sky of that pure awareness, or is it obscured by the clouds, the cars, the this and that? Because even we do all that, beneath the clouds there's still a blue sky. It's never changed, but we lost track of it.
But the ability to, on demand, like my father passed away last month, and when I have these really sad thoughts, it's taking a breath and then everything's okay.
Yes.
So in that moment, but it's a tool that I didn't have before.
Wonderful.
Was so many, that in that moment of pain, I can say, now breath, and knowing that in taking that breath, I'm pulling myself into the present moment.
It's wonderful that the breath is a way to lead you there, but in fact, in truth, you don't even need the breath. You just need to connect with this awareness, and then breath is a convenient way maybe to just open, calm and open. But if you are more familiar with the pure awareness, you can take a deep breath, but it's not. It's just a lead to that.
Yes.
So breathing in itself is just doesn't matter. It's just quite convenient to stay alive, of course.
And can I say, because as we've been in the car, my brain's going, oh my god, there's Matthieu Ricard to my left. So I'm trying to be present and don't let that thought distract me, and I keep coming back to the conversation.
Forget about that. Forget about irrelevant things.
We actually met and the last time you spoke, and we went down together to the meditation at Trafalgar Square.
Oh yes.
We were part of that.
And that rain thing was saved by the rainbow.
The beautiful rainbow. I was looking for one today. I was like, might be 2 out of 2 maybe. I
told you the other day. Now you told me something.
Yes.
I mentioned that I didn't know how to stop that meditation because there was no loudspeaker, and then everybody was doing Om and all that stuff. I was soaked in the water because they put the plastic, but it was like this, and all the water gathered in the plastic.
Yes, and I remember someone.
I didn't know what to do. Then this double rainbow came. I probably said, "Oh!" Then I got up and left.
Because some people started saying Om, and I remember you went, "Oh, this is new."
No, there's nothing I could say because nobody could hear. I was not supposed to talk.
And remember, if you would like to help create a kinder and happier world, please get involved with Action for Happiness. You can join thousands of others who are spreading a bit more happiness in their homes, workplaces, schools, and local communities. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all our content. For more conversations, visit actionforhappiness.org/podcasts. Join the movement, be the change.